we live in a period that there will be very big changes, okay? And I would like to talk about these changes. So that will be the title of my talk. And I don't know if you saw, we have a robot in the University of Nicosia. And she's my friend, and she told me a lot of secrets, which I'll try to convey some of them here. Huh? So I'll talk then about the fourth information revolution, the fourth technological revolution, and I will start with a prediction that somebody made in 1828. And it will be interesting to see not only about this prediction, but in general, how much we underestimate technological progress. Then I'll talk about artificial intelligence, a new area that's developing very fast that's called intelligence augmentation, blockchains and how they're going to get integrated. And I will start with two questions. Anybody has seen this? No. It's a computer. It was announced a couple of weeks ago. And it's a computer. You know how much it costs? 10 cents. Maybe you'll recognize this. It's another computer. As a matter of fact, it's the first computer, the first programmable computer. And I would like to talk about the trend between this one in 1946 and this one in 2018, okay? Because these trends are very important, and I'm going to talk about 10 of these trends and what they will mean for all of us. Then I'll talk about the short-term impact and implications and the long-term. And there is a lot of talk about what's going to happen in the long term. It sounds like a lot like science fiction, but a lot of science fiction becomes reality very, very fast. Okay, so that's a famous economist, or it was a famous economist. And basically, in 1828, made a prediction. At this time, they were talking whether the cars are going to substitute horses. And basically, he said, well, don't talk nonsense. There is no way that a car is going to go inside the street, deliver goods. This is the first car. Another car in the beginning of 1800. They're getting better, huh? But still, there are cars. Now, there was a law, both in England and in the United States, that in front of a car has to be somebody with a red flag telling them that there's a car coming. So you could realize how fast the cars could go. So he wasn't wrong to say that cars cannot substitute horses. So suppose that at that time somebody could have gone to say and tell him that 200 years from that time, there will be self-driving cars. And the reality, right? And they cause much fewer accidents than people. And not only cars, but even trucks. How this would have seemed to him. We have been pure science fiction, right? And I'm going to emphasize this point because a lot of things that are going to happen 20, 30 years from now, they're going to be science fiction for us, okay? And Say was not the only one to underestimate uncertainty. The president of IBM in 1943 said that the maximum demand for computers would be 5. Well, I have 2 of them in my pocket of the 5. And another very clever guy, Olson, said that we don't need computers at their home. There is no reason to have computers at our home. Okay, so basically we underestimate technological innovation. Okay? So if we want to figure out what's going to happen, what is coming, we have to open our minds. This is a sketch that they made in the beginning of 1900 to say how will be life 100 years later. And that's a modern kitchen of the year 2000. What is interesting is little kids still work, but they're very well dressed. That was the important thing of that time. That's another one. Again, a farm girl, but very well dressed. And you cannot blame them because this is a photograph from that time, and that's how people were dressed. So for them, the most important thing would have been that we're going to wear nice clothes. Even there, they were wrong. Okay. So we're going back. Okay. So the first thing I said I'm going to talk will be about artificial intelligence. What's the difference between artificial intelligence and everything else is that non-artificial intelligence, things are programmed, they are fixed. In artificial intelligence, the idea is that of learning. We can learn, okay? We can make machines to think and to learn. And that's a very big difference. There's a lot in games in particular that artificial intelligence has been going very, very fast. In 1997, it beat Kasparov, the first time that a machine could be a champion. At this time, artificial intelligence was maybe 10%, 90% was pre-programmed decisions. In 2011, it beat the champions of Jeopardy. Now, that was 100% artificial intelligence because it had to recognize speech, to understand what was going on in speech, and answer, and it beat the... Another one, a year ago, in 2017, an artificial intelligence program beat the best poker players. And the most important development in artificial intelligence with games, which probably you have heard, is this AlphaGo Zero, that managed to learn on its own with no instructions, with nothing, just that you have to win, okay, and you have to play Go. And in 40 days, managed to beat everybody, okay. So artificial intelligence has done a lot of things, okay? And in addition to games, robots are everywhere, in the factory, in the field, in agriculture, and maybe some of you have read and seen the Amazon Go. It's a store with no employees. You just go, you buy whatever you want. With artificial intelligence, they see what you have bought. They charge you. When you pay, they put it on your credit card. So the big questions is what's going to happen. Artificial intelligence is very good in this, games, image recognition, speech recognition, text recognition. And what we call the Amara's law, we underestimate technology in the long run, we overestimate in the short run. A lot of things we say that they're going to happen, that they haven't happened yet, okay? So when the rules are fixed, the environment is constant, and the forecast cannot change the future, artificial intelligence is superb, and it's going to change a lot of things in our lives, okay? Face recognition, I don't know if some of you have the iPhone, the X, you put it there, you don't need signatures, you don't need passwords, you don't need anything, you can pay, it recognizes you, and it's a big technological improvement. There was a story that the Chinese, that they use it to a great extent, they found some fugitive in a stadium with 10,000 people, and they put him in jail. Okay. So the face recognition, image recognition, okay. So the big question is, if the current trends continue, there is no doubt that at some point computers and robots will be smarter than us. And what will happen then? Okay. The good news is that the robots will have pets, right? The bad news, that will become the pets of robots. At least that's what a lot of people worry today. Okay. Now, this is true unless if we do something which we're going to use artificial intelligence to augment our own intelligence. And there is a lot of work being done now towards this direction. Okay. There is a lot of evidence and there's a lot of work that if we combine what machines can do and what we can do, and we take the best of what we can do and the best of what machines can do and combine them, we're going to be able to avoid these problems that many people talk about the future, and basically meaning the end of humanity. And this is a quote from a very clever woman who is in charge of MIT's lab, who says that instead of fretting about how robots and AI will eliminate jobs, we should explore new ways for humans and machines to collaborate. Okay? So that's the idea of intelligence augmentation. And a lot of science fiction is moving into this direction, and I'm going to talk about some of these predictions, what we can do to augment our own intelligence. Okay? Now, the problem is when we want to communicate with the computer, we have to go through a keyboard. Very, very slow. In the next 5 years, we're going to be able to communicate with voice. Already it's being done. So we're going to avoid the keyboard. But even then, it's going to be slow. And the big thing is what they call the brain-computer interface. How we can communicate directly from our brain with the computer. Now, if we manage this, then we open huge possibilities. Okay? And I'm going to talk a little about this. Okay? So the next thing, and there were some talks here about, I saw before, about blockchain and how blockchains, we can integrate it with artificial intelligence and why we're going to need that. And I'm going to talk about this. Okay? So basically, blockchain is a ledger, is a book. We had accounting books that were putting information and retrieving information. Blockchain is a digital form of a ledger, of a book. It has three very important properties. The first one is trust. If you use blockchains, you establish trust between the parties. The parties can trust each other. The second thing is something that is written in blockchains, you cannot change it. Okay? So it's incorruptible, it's immutable, it's incorruptible. And both of these are very important for safety. And I'm going to explain why it's so important, safety in the transactions that we're doing. And the result is that with blockchains, you don't need intermediaries. Okay? And it's very important this because the information is encrypted, that we have extreme safety. Okay, there are two things in blockchains that are very important. The first one is smart contracts. And the second one is what we call decentralized autonomous organizations. And these two are going to change a lot of things about our lives. The first one is we're going to need fewer lawyers. The second one is we're going to need fewer managers and fewer employees. with a lot of implications again. Okay? So, I'm going to talk then why we need to integrate artificial intelligence and blockchains. And I'm going to talk about these cars that they drive on their own. Okay? And one of the most important things, and not only for cars, but for everything else, it's safety. I don't know how many of you remember a couple of years ago that a truck went and fell on people, killed how many? 86 and injured close to 500. Now imagine that somebody hacks a truck, and not only one truck. You get a company that has 20 trucks and hacks 20 trucks and so throws them on people in a parade. We cannot afford that. And that's where a blockchain comes to establish safety. Okay. And the same thing is true for other things. But in addition to safety, blockchains can allow interconnectivity. Each driving car will be able to communicate with all other cars. If you're in a place and you want to go to another place, in your phone, you will be able to find the car which is going to be closest to you and goes to the direction that you want to go. And the last thing is this autonomous operation. You can have a car that nobody needs to supervise, can do everything by itself. And it may sound like far in the future, but it's not really that far in the future. Okay? The same thing would be, you have probably heard about the Internet of Things. Again, if you have the Internet of Things, somebody can hack your house, can close you inside your house and can ask you for money in order to let you out. So again, safety is important. Interconnectivity is very important. Okay. For instance, houses will have solar panels. You can connect them with others in the neighborhood. So there are a lot of these things, okay, and I don't have very much time to go into details, but which are going to help us a lot when we combine artificial intelligence and blockchain, okay? And then I'm going to talk about these trends that I told you, about these 10 emerging trends. And the three of them is supercomputer, nanotechnology, and faster and broader networks, okay? This is the computer that I showed you in the beginning. This is grains of salt. It's smaller than a grain of salt. Imagine a computer smaller than a grain of salt that costs 10 cents. And coming back then to the ENIAC, it was a computer that was built in 1946. It weighed 30 tons. Okay. It required 200 meters of space. It took 3 years to build. And its computational power was less than a hand calculator today. Now, consider the trend from 1946 to 2018. How many years there are? And just open your mind and say what's going to happen in another 30 years. And it's not only these trends, but there are a lot of other trends that if we spend a little time and try to extrapolate them, we'll come into the conclusion that very soon we're going to live in another world. And it doesn't take very much forecasting to be able to do that, and just think between here and here, okay? And think what's going to happen if this computer can be used every place. Like you produce a product and you're going to put it inside for 10 cents, you can afford to do it. Okay. So, huge possibilities. Okay. Now, if you take these three things together, we're going to see a lot of progress in what we call the cloud computing. Now, cloud computing will not be something like the Dropbox. In addition to storing anything, you can have the processing power that you want. What this will mean? Right now, what percentage we're using our computers? Even our phones, a very small percentage of time. If we go to the cloud, we can have a very simple device to connect with the cloud and use it any place we want for any sophisticated programs we want, and not have any fixed expenses, any fixed investments to have in our company or for our houses, okay? We're going to require just a very cheap terminal, okay, to be able to use the cloud, and even a digital watch. And there's a lot of work being done because everybody realized the importance of this. And being able to have a watch that you can project, so you don't need a big screen, and you don't need a keyboard because you can talk to this watch. So imagine then the world that this will be happen. It's going to be the next 5 years, the next 10 years. And then computing will become basically a commodity, okay, that you can use anytime you need, anytime you want. Very cheap, very flexible, very efficient, okay. Already they're doing that just from a smartphone to be able to project the keyboard and be able to project what you see there in a screen, okay? And there is all of these other trends that if I have time, I could have come and analyze each one of them. But if you look all of them, we're coming to the same conclusion, okay? We're going to have greater automation. Changes are going to come much faster. The rate of change in innovation is going to accelerate, and we're going to have things that, well, a lot of jobs are going to be destroyed. Yes, no doubt about it. But the same thing happens when machines replace people. Okay. A lot of jobs are destroyed. But now the unemployment is much less than what it used to be before machines. Okay. So in addition then to jobs destroyed, there will be a lot of jobs created. Okay. And a lot of people saying, yes, maybe unemployment will not change, but the jobs will not be so interesting, would be less pay for doing these jobs. And maybe some of this may be possible, but after a transitional period, we'll find some equilibrium. Now, the third and most serious concern is there will be huge income and wealth inequalities. Okay. People talk a lot how you can avoid that, what you can do. One of the things, if it is in the same country, talk about some minimum income and some transfer from countries that are going to be more artificial intelligence oriented to those which are going to be less, okay? So coming now to a little more going into the future, there's a lot of people talking about a symbiosis of our brain with machines, okay? Now, some of the predictions are what they call non-invasive. In other words, you have a thing like this on your head, it measures, it takes a good thing about what's happened to your brain, and with this you can communicate with the computer, okay? There are others who talk about more radical changes, like implanting chips into your brain, okay? And even going something more, talking about augmenting the prefrontal cortex of our brain through operations and through chips. Okay? Now, again, this sounds a lot like science fiction, but just remember what happened at the time of Say, less than 200 years ago, and to what extent he would have thought that cars driving on their own would have been possible, okay? So I would like to finish with this, that science fiction slowly is becoming reality, and it's going to influence everything in our lives. And if you have any doubt about this, think about Say, okay? And I would like to finish with this. And one of the other things I would like to say is that kids right now, they have grown up with computers, with telephones, and they're going to be a threat to adults because computers is part of their upbringing. And as an example, this is the youngest graduate of our MOOC courses in digital currency. So have this in mind. You're going to have competition from very young people. And with this, I want to thank you.